What do we still have that ALG montage?
Yes, we do. Mr. Ali, kindly make me a host, please. Thanks. Mr. Ali, kindly make me co-host. Thank you, sir.
Go on.
And also Pastor Sonny.
Well, good evening and warm greetings and welcome to today's edition of the African Leadership Group, the Nigerian Leadership Series meeting today. I want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to thank you all for your time and attention. Today, we're going to be looking at the subject matter, political stability and party ideologies. Political stability and party ideologies. That's the topic we're going to be looking at today. And we're going to be having a very, very special person to talk to us today. A good friend of mine, also a man of the cloth, Reverend General, and also a politician of to some extent, who has really, really run around a little bit in the political field. I think he and I have had a conversation before around here. National leader. He's currently the chairman of the African Democratic Congress, one of the registered political parties in Nigeria. I think he's the Lagos State chairman. He's also the PRO of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, Lagos State. And he was a senatorial candidate for Lagos East senatorial candidate in the 2023 elections. And I think he finished those elections in the third place. Professionally, he's a chartered manager, an international certified management consultant, and fellow of several UK and Nigerian professional chartered institutions with a background in engineering and aviation. As I said, he's an ordained minister of the gospel and a theological scholar. Reverend George Ashiru, you're most welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Pastor. It was my great honor to be invited to be on this podcast. And thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for accepting our invitation, and thank you for being really, really gracious to us on our various platforms, also at Trinity House, and your consistent support of most things that we do. It was really refreshing also to see you at the IOM conference again, I think last week. Thank you so much for your love and passion for good things and for our great nation, Nigeria. Let me start by asking you of your opinion of the current political situation in Nigeria. What's your opinion? Where do you think our politics is in this beautiful and wonderful country called Nigeria?
Thank you very, very much, sir. This is a very, very interesting subject matter in consideration on the background of the American elections that we modeled our constitution after. Now we can see how not so straightforward, how difficult even such a democracy well over 200 years, and they are still struggling in having the perfect union. And so clearly to me, our democracy is one each thing and 10 miles wide. We're not in depth in terms of our understanding of political processes. Our people culturally are not attuned to the idea of freedom, freedom to express themselves, freedom to choose, freedom to determine their own outcomes. We are used culturally to our fathers, our leaders, our religious leaders, our cultural leaders, our monarchs and kings, over the past hundreds and hundreds of years, telling us what is good for us. And so the opportunity to now choose leaders is something we are still grappling with generation to generation. And I think, therefore, our democracy is not anywhere near the standard, the expectation of the grafters of the democratic practice, all the way back to ancient Greece. And then, of course, the Romans, then Europeans, and then the Americans. So I think we still have a long way to go. I still think that we are work in progress, probably 2%, 3%. You know, in software development and in implementation, when you start to load the software, at the moment you say go, you see the percentage load, and it starts to load, and then, you know, it's 1%. So if your network is very good, it's very fast. You get to 0 to 100 in a short period of time. If your network is not very good, or the interferences, or the gigabytes that you have that is supporting the network is small, or the bandwidth is not wide, you're going to crash that system and it will not finish loading. So that's just an analogy of where we are as a nation in our democratic practice. Pastor Ituah.
But we started this route to democracy late 40s, early 50s. Okay, Awolowo was Prime Minister or Premier of Western Nigeria in 1952-53. Tafawa Balewa was a leader or something like that. I don't know what they called him. And you had various premiers in the north and in the east. And we've been coming along that trajectory, almost 70 years of some kind of self-rule in Nigeria and 64 years of independence. How come we're still not politically where we're supposed to be and stable? What do you think happened to the trajectory of our political development?
I think what's interesting is that we had self-rule until the whites came here. So we have never had a problem with self-rule. We just had a problem with giving people the choice of who to rule them. So long before the whites came into the country in the 18th century, in the 19th century, we ruled ourselves. We had our kings, our monarchs, we had our chieftaincy, we had the various elitist groups that were running our various republics. You know, we had the Oyo empires, we had the Mali empires, the Songhai empires, we had empires to the north, to the east, and the south, and the west of Nigeria, long before the whites came in here. So really, our problem has never been self-rule. Our problem is that the kind of self-rule we had 70 to 80%. It was still based on elitist methodology. It was still based on monarchical systems. It was still based on the few people essentially telling all the people what to do. So even when we had whatever we did between 1940 and 1959 was still under the British Empire. So our people were prime ministers, ministers, but the British was telling us how to run the government. And then when they finally left us here, we had regional developments. And in those regions, again, all the leaders were imposed upon us. So I don't remember anybody particularly ever going about with a placard wanting to vote contrary to what the leaders asked them to so do. So I think the issue is that we haven't really perfected any one form of this democratic system. We haven't decided if we're going to have a purely American system of democracy, or we're going to have some kind of hybrid between our republic, our ancient republics, and then this modern democracy. We still have some institutional frameworks from the British Empire in our civil service. And then we're not even practicing the pure American democracy that we decided to write a constitution after. Our local governments are not totally autonomous. Supreme Court had to tell people what the constitution already said 25 years ago. So I think, generally speaking, there has never been that kind of a conference to map out, to fashion out a more wholesome methodology for how we want to run our country. Democracy may work, but it also may not work. You know, perhaps we want theocracy. Perhaps we want to return to the monarchical system. Perhaps we want some kind of syncretism at different levels. For example, local government administration. We want to give them to the kings. So really, nobody has had that conversation. We've had impositions. First, the white man's imposition. Then we couldn't deal with that. We had a civil war. Then the armed forces came in and they imposed another methodology on us. They took us from regions. They cut us into states. Strange bedfellows became people with that you had to share resources with. And then they kept cutting and cutting and cutting. And now we've created something that nobody knows exactly how to manage. So I think the key thing is that we're working within the limitations of the roots of what is the tree that has been planted for us without our knowledge.
So what do you think we should do now at this stage in our lives? I mean, you've spoken so well, and this, for me, is quite a fresh way of looking at this thing. Yeah, and you said, you're very right. I agree that before the advent of the British in the 16th and 17th century, the Portuguese, when they got to Benin, my area, they were shocked at the level of development, infrastructure, the environment. It is reputed that the Benin Wall is even longer and better structured than the Wall of China. And we had street lights, albeit powered by palm kernel or palm oil or whatever lamp chance in Benin. Very well arranged organization that we even seemed a little bit more advanced than the Portuguese who came to see us initially primarily for trade and exchange of goods. Now, I'm now thinking as you were talking that should we just have been left with our monarchies and continue that development? Because in that time in Africa, you didn't have this wide dichotomy of rich and poor. You didn't have this foreign exchange problem. You didn't have, you had food sustainability. Everybody had their farm. You went to farm, you cultivated your farm, you harvested your yams, you ate your yam, and if you needed salt, you exchanged with somebody who had banana and I mean, everybody was almost on the same level. You graduated as a young boy, they will give you your own farm to start farming. When you are old enough, they find you a wife to marry. And as many, everybody started life, and it was as hard as you worked that the society rewarded you. And nobody was anybody's servant except you were captured in war, you know, and everybody had their own. There was housing, 100% housing for everybody. There were no homeless people. Medicare was available with the local Babalago or local herbalist and all that. You and him paid and exchanged. And when you couldn't afford it, the village rallied around you that this one must not die. So we had a good system. And Kabiyesi passed judgment on affairs, and his word was law, and everybody knew what was right and wrong in society. In fact, sometimes you committed a crime, nobody needed to tell you. You just go and hang yourself, or you just go into exile, and everybody now is looking for you. They say, well, yesterday you slept with a cockroach, you slept with Baba Aladini's wife, and you've gone quietly into exile. We had a very, very good and respectable environment. We self-govern very well. So what happened to us, with the advent of the British? And now that we're in the middle of the water here, what should we as reasonable people do to get a much, much better society that caters to the needs of everybody? That's my question.
Thank you. Thank you very much again, Pastor Itua. I think one of the aberrations of our experience has been the fact that we've had a selfish class of leaders who have been focused more on how to keep their status, so to speak, rather than how to deliver good governance. Because when you are thinking of delivering good governance, the first thing that comes to your mind is, what system will I use to so do? I remember the history of the Korean people. They had several dynasties, and the very last one before the modern Korean emperor was called the Joseon. And one of the things that is critical about their development is that there was a king called King Sejong. That king said the only duty of a king is to love his people. He said the only duty of a king is to love his people. He said because the moment you love your people, you will find a way to govern in such a way that it will bring the best to the people. So one of the key things we have lacked in Nigeria is not so much that we have used this method of government or that method of government or that kind of government. It has always been the heart of the ruler. It has always been the vision of the leader. So when someone is in charge in whatever formation, whether it's in a monarchical system, whether it's a republic, whether it's a functional democracy, it is still down to how the person who is at the top decides to govern. So I think we sometimes think that there is a better way to rule in terms of systems or structures. The reality is there is a better ruler or a better leader or a better personality. And that's what we are lacking. We haven't, over the decades and centuries we've existed as nations, we haven't really worked out a way of building leaders. Now look at the Japanese society. Look at the cultures of the Korean society, the quality cultures of their society. The fact that young men have to go into the military in order to teach them discipline. Look at European society. I'm not even talking about the modern society, which has become, in quote, woke. We're talking about 40, 50 years ago. These were people that they were very, very loyal to their nations, and they were loyal to their kings, and their kings were loyal back to them. And therefore, they created a more perfect kingdom in all of these various kingdoms. So I think, again, the failure of the Nigerian experience has much little to do with whether we're practicing democracy or we're not practicing democracy, because we have experimented with everything. We tried the parliamentary system, we couldn't succeed. We tried the military system, it failed us. And we've had the same civil service all through. So why can't the civil service that has been in place since the 1940s, in fact, since 1914, if we have to really go back to the British Empire days, why couldn't they create for us a more perfect structure? And so that leaders can come and go, but the system does not fail. It all still comes down to one critical problem. We have not in this nation really done anything about knowingly, methodically building leaders whose heart, whose passion, whose desire is to create a greater nation. There's one phrase I use all the time when I talk about Nigeria. I say, building a nation brick by brick. Have you laid your brick? We have lots of people who are not in any way patriotic, and they are going to become rulers and leaders and CEOs one day, and they're not going to give anything back to the system because they are self-centered. So if we say we want to go back to fixing Nigeria, let us first start with leadership. If we can fix the leadership equation, we can put up any strategy, the leader will implement it. But if we have a terrible leader and a good system, a terrible leader will destroy the system. And I think that really is my own expectation, especially since we are speaking under the African Leadership Group, that we need to really go back to looking for emerging leaders, building them up, teaching them how to rule, how to lead, and more importantly, teaching them the tools of governance, tools of leadership, so that in another generation from now, we will have people that can go in any position, whether it's in a corporate world, whether it's in a spiritual, religious entities, whether they're going into governance at any level. They have imbibed that culture because we taught them from childhood, taught them in the churches, we taught them at homes, we taught them in schools, and then they'll be able to get there and do their best. But you cannot, a piece of bread has the same ingredients as a loaf of bread. A crumb of bread has the same ingredients as a loaf of bread. So if the country is toxic, everybody's toxic. So it doesn't matter who you vote in. Toxicity will just keep repeating itself like infusion. And I think that's really is the elephant in the room we still try not to focus on, is that we have a weakness of leadership culture in this nation. And we focus on power, we focus on position, but leadership is an art, is a science, it's a calling. And we need to do what we can to ensure that we imbibe that culture of true leadership. Once the culture is right, the process will be right. Once the culture is right, the process will be right. Corporate culture determines how well an organization grows, not profits, culture. You know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. People say strategy eats culture. No, strategy is worthless if the culture is toxic. And that culture is dependent on the leadership. If the leadership is weak or wrong, then the culture will be weak and wrong, and it will cascade to everybody in the society. Sir.
You are muted, sir. Pastor, you are muted.
Well, you people muted me now. You've spoken very well, my brother.
Thank you, sir.
Now I'm going to turn it back to you. And this, what you mentioned now, is probably the primary reason why African Leadership Group was established. It's probably what has been my headache and my concern for many years. A lot of people do not know that I've been talking about Nigeria, writing about Nigeria, questioning Nigeria, even from primary school.
I think Nigeria has happened to Pastor's network.
Yes,
And those days, you know, where the editors were my friends, and whatever letter I wrote, they would publish. So it's been a sort of concern for me. Now,
sorry, I think we lost his network. Okay, he's back in now.
sorry, we lost power for a few minutes here. So what do we now do? Here we are in Nigeria. We have been blessed, let me use the word blessed, with years of really, really self-centered leadership. You know, leaders that don't love their people. You know, that's exactly what the leader of Dubai said. The primary duty of a leader is to make his people happy. Mm-hmm. What do we now do as a people? What can you do? What should I do? What should Jumoke do? What should Sonny do? What should Professor Grange do? What should Auntie MEC do? What should Shola do? What should Emeka do? What should Mohammed, Abdullahi? What should Risikat? What do we do to make sure that we get or put in place courage of that we should have? For our own bricks should we carry?
All right, sir. It's a little bit of a red herring when people focus not on what they should do, but what others ought to do. So there's a lot of critical spirit in our society. We have a tendency to focus on what someone else ought to do better. But that idea of brick by brick is that the thing that you are doing right now is your leadership experience. If you are a mother, you mother well. That's your contribution to the society. Confucius said, he said, a great nation is dependent on the family unit. So if you're a father and you are fathering effectively, you have laid your brick for a great nation. If you are a teacher and you are teaching wholesomely, you have laid your brick for your nation. You don't have to be a political leader. That's a calling. I keep saying it's a calling. And if you miss your road into political leadership and it's not a calling, you are going to fail because it is a calling. The Bible tells us that God is the one that appoints leaders. But there are lots of people that are ambitious to get there and they don't have the grace and the strength to succeed. So that is one of those things that I think people focus on the things that other people are not doing well, rather than focus on the things they ought to do to add value to the ecosystem. Now, that's an individual level. Now, we point to the leadership at the top. We point to the leadership. We point to the political leadership. But the political leadership were people that grew up from the home. They grew up from the community. The culture in the community determines the output we're going to get from them when they get to political leadership. So if, for example, I'm an Ijebu man, and in Ijebu land, you know, money is everything. You got to make money. You know, it's very important for you to be rich. That's the culture we have created for those children. And as soon as they grow up, all they will think of is this: in order for me to succeed in life, I need to be wealthy because that's what my culture promotes. And then I begin to chase wealth. I begin to look for it and because I need the validation of it because my culture promotes it. But what if my culture promotes excellence? What if my culture promotes great moral character? What if my culture promotes quality, like the Japanese culture? What is it promotes etiquette, like the Korean culture? What if it promotes, you can see how rich the Asians are, yet they have not lost their original culture. The culture of the fruit of the spirit, you can see it even in their culture. They are patient, they are kind, they look after their own, they make sure everything is fine for everybody. They greet each other in public, they respect elders. But no, we choose to follow American culture. We choose to follow European culture. What is our culture? And if we understand that, we will build people who are steeped in that rightness, and they will grow to become those who will be showcasing what our culture is. Have you been to Ghana, South Africa, Kenya? Every country you go to, when they refer to Nigeria, they say Nigerians are loud. That's the culture that they see. They say Nigerians are affluent. That's the culture that they see. They see, but none of this, they're not talking about productivity. They're not talking about patriotism. They're not talking about Nigerians being good at anything that has to do with, promoting the nation, Nigeria itself. But individual excellence, they are rich. This guy is successful. That's because we are all individualists in this country, and we focus on what we can get for ourselves. And I think one of the challenges we have is also patriotism. A lot of us just don't think Nigeria is a nation. We think it's a country that has several nations. We're more loyal to our communities than we're loyal to the nation. Now, as a person who was once an athlete, who has had to carry Nigerian flag as a young child, I know what it feels like when you wear the Nigerian colors and you go out and you compete in the name of Nigeria and you do well in the name of Nigeria, and then you come back and you are honored, by Nigeria. When I represented Nigeria at the All Africa Games as a young university student, 1987, and I won a medal and I came back, and the federal government gave me a scholarship. And then a year later, Lagos State government gave me another scholarship because I represented the country. Why would I not be patriotic to the country that has given me something? And why would I not want to serve that nation? So I wasn't surprised in 1990 when Nelson Mandela was released from prison. And I was one of the young men that were invited to meet Nelson Mandela. Met Nelson Mandela one-on-one. I was able to at least shake his hand and hear him say, well done, young man. And that for me was the highlight of my youth, that I met Nelson Mandela in April 1990. Right from prison, straight out of prison, Nigeria first port of call. And George actually was one of those that met him. Hearing him speak about what it took to fight for South African independence, what it has taken him 27 years and years before that, it made me realize the importance of this patriotism, the importance of looking out for other people, not just ourselves. It made me realize that serving is godly. Serving in the political system, serving in your community, serving in whatever capacity, whatever gift or talent you have, that's very, very important. You give out of what you have, and the system gives back to you. But we have created a culture of individualism over the past 25, 30, 40 years. We have created a culture of me too and me first. And that is one of the challenges that we have now. So the leader that comes in is going to find it difficult to reorientate another generation to start thinking Nigeria first. Nigeria is important. Nigeria is a great brand, and we must do everything. And unfortunately, the political system is not the place to look at for creating culture. The political system is the platform for a man who has been cultured to use, to promote his candidacy. That's the critical thing. So if the people that come to the party and say they want to be senators, they want to be governors, are toxic, that's the only option available to the party. But if there are people that want to come into the party, any party system, and say, I want to serve Nigeria, I'm patriotic, and you see those kinds of patriotic, well-mannered, well-cultured, well-taught, competent young people that want to serve, and you give them that same platform, you get fantastic outputs. And I think that is one of the things that I'm going to say that we as political leaders ought to do, start finding opportunities and creating more for people that really want to serve this nation, not just people looking for a platform to become rich, to become successful, to get appointments. And I think that is, for now, what I'm going to add to that question, sir.
But I think the challenge now is getting that collective will of people to agree that this is the kind of leadership we want to search for. Today, getting into politics is an individual decision. Most people just wake up and say, I want to be this, I want to be that, and they now begin to maneuver their way. There's nobody that sits together to review George Ashiru. Why should George Ashiru want to be a senator? What is the proof of his character? And also, what is the proof of his competence? You understand? In most other countries like China, maybe even like Britain, you'd have seen a track record of some sort of somebody coming in at some level. Kemi Badenoch now, like her or not like her, went through a trajectory of being, first of all, an ordinary MP, was MP for about 5 years, joined 1 or 2 committees, maybe proved herself in those committees. She now was brought into some kind of leadership. Then after that, she became shadow cabinet member of some sort. Now, over a 20-year political career that people have seen, both inside her party and outside her party, the responsibility of party leadership has fallen on her. For the next 3, 4, 5 years, she'll be party leader. If she's fortunate, she can become prime minister next round of elections. She does that tenure, and she's almost then out of the system, and now becomes like an elder consultant or whatever it is. Cameron has come and gone. Thatcher came and left. Even Sunak has done his own tenure and is out. He may come back, who knows, but typically they leave. And so there's always a refreshing of the system. The American system, similar but slightly different. But at least there's some way at which people are assessed. The problem in Nigeria is there's nothing. The guy just shows up. And depending on where the political pendulum falls and which master he serves, and maybe how much money he's able to throw around without even asking, where did you get this money? He's able to maneuver. Let me use the word maneuver. Another word could be manipulate the system to one day is now being surrounded by sirens and police escorts. We've seen it happen so many times in Nigeria. And then those places, because it is now his own turn. In fact, that almost became an ideology in Nigeria in the last election. That is my turn, and so on and so forth. And the people are helpless and almost hapless They don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to respond. We don't know how to say, this is wrong. You know, these days in Nigeria, people rig elections blatantly. They know they rig elections. Everybody knows they rigged the elections. And then they say, go to court, we rigged.
I think he's frozen again. Paye, can you check on his Mr. President's network? Yeah. Good evening, sir. Please give us a minute. I'm sure he'll be back.
George,
No.
Okay.
if you have the direction of his questions, maybe you may attempt to provide some answer.
Okay. Begin to answer some of these questions.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I think it goes back to what I had started saying about the political structures and organizations we have in this country can only use the availability of the candidates that come to it. So if, for example, people that have the right kind of the mindset about serving this country, but are afraid of political exposure, they are afraid to be seen in a political setting. They would rather be activists or NGO leaders or be in a corporate world, because in their mind, you know, there is a presumption that the political system, the culture in the political system is very, very negative or perceived to be negative. Then what you're going to get is that the people that have a tendency to have attraction for thuggery, attraction for gangsterism, attraction for cultism and occultism, they love power. The entire idea of cultism and occultism is power in itself. And they will use every platform available for that power. And that includes, and more importantly, includes the political party system. So what has happened is that the citizenry, not trusting the democratic experience, have chosen not to participate, have chosen to say, okay, let's just leave it. Problem is that these people create policies, implement them. These people use your tax, your taxes, the revenue from your taxes to implement whatever it is they want to implement, and create greater problem and suffering, even for those who are looking at it and say it's for them. So one of the challenges we have is that we still don't trust the political process. We don't see it as a very viable tool to be able to serve God and serve man. A lot of us still see it as where some people go. I got into the political party system also by accident. Somebody just said, look, we need you to change this country. We need you to change this country. We need you to change this country. You people change this country. You people should do this. And the same challenge I'm giving everybody today is the same way I took it. I said, okay, why not? Why should we all sit down and criticize? Let's all get in the ring and make an effort. So I joined the party, and within 6 months, based on whatever it is they saw, they invited me to be a chairman. And there are people who had been trying to be chairman for 6, 7 years before I got into the party. You know, but I promised them, I said, look, I'm coming with a culture. If you can't take it, then I'm not taking it. And I called Pastor Itua, and he prayed for me and said, look, go ahead. And here you are today. You know, I've been in that position for about 3 years. And I think the key thing is that I then have the option of going there and behaving like the complaints we've had, or going there and saying, no, I'm changing the culture. You know, I'm not going to accept thuggery. So one of the first things I did is I looked at all the candidacy, the options available, and we had high quality people. I'm sure you all know of Funsho Doherty. He was my candidate. And the gentleman that ran, against him in the primaries, Akin Braithwaite, was a former general manager at MTN. So we brought people who really had passion, people who really wanted to change this country, who had succeeded individually in business, who had thought that when I retire, I will spend the rest of my life serving Nigeria. So we created that culture. And so it is possible to get into a political party system and create that culture. I'm not saying it's straightforward. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's just like setting up a church. You're going to evangelize. You're going to go to places where you are not going to be welcome. You're going to have resistance from the community. But if you have a calling, you go into it, you believe it's going to happen, and God blesses you to make it happen. And I think it's the same thing with being an entrepreneur. You are never quite sure if you're going to succeed. But what you do is this: you take a seed of faith and you begin the process. You say, look, I'm going to try. and I'm going to use my competency and my experience, and I'm going to try and see what I can do. Now, every time you fail, you come back to reflect, to review, and then you say, okay, maybe I'm not for entrepreneurship, it's not for me. Let me be an investor. Then you invest in other things. So, back to what Pastor Itua was saying, it's down to the fact that we just have to put our hearts in the ring. We just have to make an effort. The only difference is look clearly. Some people, because of ambition, will say, let me go to the ruling party. It's easiest to get to the top. That person has the wrong heart. Oh, let me go to the party that has money, because then, when I get to that party, it's easy for me to get there. Then you have the wrong heart. You have to look for a party that has the culture and the ideology that suits you, that suits your vision, what you want to do, what you want to serve. They will give you not just a welcoming space, they will push you to do what you're supposed to do. Generally speaking, the challenge of Pastor Itua to us is, how do we then go and create this group of leaders? Mentoring. We have to be proactively mentoring people. We have to actively draw people, younger people around us, and continue to create the kind of platform, just like this one, where they're hearing constantly, the alternatives. This is the proper way to do things. This is the expected way to do things. This will help you succeed in running Nigeria when you have the opportunity. If you are invited to be an SA commissioner or special assistant, now we've laid the right foundation. Of course, if you go there and then you decide to turn left, that will be between you and God. But not that we have not attempted to look for those leaders and push them forward. So that's what I would think. I think it's brick by brick means you lay a brick, and I invite somebody to lay a brick, and together we begin to create a fantastic nation. How I describe nation building. I describe nation building in terms of a house. Every house has a foundation and a roof. Every house has pillars. Every house has walls and windows. Some of us will be foundational in our methodology of leadership. We are good at laying foundations. Some people are good at becoming pillars. We will stand with what we have and invest and make sure it happens. Some people are protectors. They will protect the values. They are like walls in the nation. Some people allow the revelation, the opportunity to see outside and see within and see how to make things better. They're like windows. And some people are covers. They cover us, like ministers, like pastors, like bishops, like people. That bishops and pastors and ministers that God has sent to the political space, to the leadership space. They create that covering. And then don't forget, there's still another one. It's called the scaffolding. Scaffolding doesn't need to stay there, but they ensure that at least there's that initial, not just covering, but the painting and all the external structures are in place, so that at the end of the day, when we unveil this institution, this house, this building, we'll say, come, let's go and do housewarming. That's what we all need to do. But some people would rather stay outside and watch you build that house, and they will criticize you until you are finished building the house. And then if they hate you, they will come and pee by the side of your house, and they will say, because they are angry, they will not want that house to be built. We have people who don't want Nigeria to be great. We have people that do not want Nigeria to be successful. There are people that hate the concept of a nation called Nigeria, but then they also hate their communities. Why? They have taken the internalization of their issues and pour it out on other people. We have to find a way to heal them. An American diplomat once said to me, said, George, he said, if you complain about all the young people that are not patriotic in your community, did they take part in building that wall? Because anyone who was not part of building the wall does not care if anybody else defaces the wall. If anybody does not, if in your community, you clear the gutter, you're one of those that entered gutter to clear it, and you see somebody throwing plastic inside, you are going to citizens arrest immediately because you did something. That's what we all need to do. That's what we have to challenge ourselves to do. That's what we have to. And most of us think you have to wait until you're in office. No. These are the challenges we have. Start with the brick that God has given you. Sir.
All right. Let's now just look quickly, and then I'm going to throw it open for questions and hand over to Pastor Sonny and Jumoke to handle that. As to political stability, party ideologies. Is Nigeria now on a trajectory of political stability? And what are the various ideologies that the different parties have? If it exists at all.
Well, as a party chairman myself, I can say that that's one area that a lot of parties clearly do not have. If we had ideologies, we wouldn't have 19 parties, because that would indicate that we have 19 ways in which we want to govern Nigeria. If we had true ideologies, we should have just 2 or 3, because the way in which you can build a nation is divided basically into 2 or 3 different ways in which you can build a nation. So it helps us to understand why there are 2 key parties in the UK, 2 key parties in France, 2 key parties in Japan, 2 key parties in Italy, 2 or 3 key parties in the United States of America. Because after a while, when your ideology is formed, you know, you then have, like in the church, it's either you are Pentecostal, you are Orthodox, you know, or you're Catholic. It's just like that. It's difficult to have anything else outside that without being heretic. One of the things I believe that we're doing wrong politically is that we see political party purely as a platform for those who want to contest. We don't see it as a movement that promotes a particular belief systems that will impact society. You know, you would expect that a party that says, for example, Green Party will be interested in agriculture, but you discover that at the end of the day, they're not even interested in agriculture. You'll be thinking that a party that calls itself Brown Party will be interested in building houses and the ideology will build around that, but you'll be surprised that all they want is just a platform, another platform for people who want to contest. So I think we, as party leadership, we haven't tried enough to create ideology around our party movement. We do not have a lot of parties that have clear ideologies. They have policies, you see, but those policies are like KPIs. It's not the same as vision. Because if you have proper vision, you have proper missions, people will be able to say that particular party, we know them for transparency. We know them for integrity. We know them for fantastic financial management. So if we want financial management, we know exactly who to go for. You know, so we have not been able to translate we could not translate the personal integrity of General Buhari into the party which he formed to become president, that they merged for him to become president. He was not able to translate his own personal integrity to the ideology of that same party. That just shows you how difficult it is. Now, you have to go back to the days of MPN and UPN, when you could see that UPN had very, very strong and very clear ideology, which was more people-oriented, which was more, which was not elitist. It was people-driven, and it you know, free education. It was education at all levels. It was you could tell that there was an ideology around UPN. NPN was more of a Republican type of movement. You know, they were focused on capitalism, you know, and wealth creation, but not wealth distribution. So people could decide, okay, I just want money. I want to become successful. I want to make money. I want to be a good businessman. I want less taxes. Let me go this way. Or I want a party that is more socially driven, you know, that is welfareist in its approach, whatever titles they call them. That's an ideology movement. We don't have that in this country. We have those who say so, but we haven't seen it in action when they govern, when they're given the opportunity. Because at the end of the day, people play politics 24 hours. Something else I want to add, Pastor Itua, is that politics is emotional. It is not objective. People vote how they feel, not what is right. So a politician tries to make people feel something to energize them to vote. The number of people that are focused on policies to make their decisions, who are focused on ideology, who are focused on policy, the competency of the candidates to be able to implement their own policies, they will be maybe 0.01% of the entire electorate. The vast majority of people are moved by charisma. They are moved by imagery. They are moved by the person is generous, he gave money in our community. These are all emotional responses, which makes it difficult for ideology to be established within the political party system. And then when you talk about stability, how can there be stability when the toxicity is the foundation? We just talked about building a house. if the foundation of a political system is based on toxicity, is based on a desire for wealth, desire for power, then it is impossible for there to be stability, because politicians, Ibrahim Babangida said something. He said, for a coup to succeed, a coup plotter must create instability in the system to create a basis for intervention. These days we call it disruption. If somebody say, I'm a disruptor, I disrupt the system, I disrupt. Some people say Donald Trump is a disruptor. He disrupted the existing system, and then he was able to gather a mass motion. But all of that reaction is still emotional. There is no specificity in terms of how exactly those things are going to impact the people. Most of the reaction is first emotional, then people later go back and think, okay, exactly what are you going to do, sir? And how are you going to do it? Then how will it impact me? So emotionalism has taken over, and therefore party leaders don't bother with ideology, because they know that they can simply manipulate the emotions of people. And once they manipulate the emotions of people, do you know what you're going to get? What you're going to get is instability. Sir.
All right, very good, very, very good. Let me hand over to Sonny and see if we have any hands up for questions, so that we don't drag the meeting for too long. Thank you so much. But what I would like you to think about, is some kind of a roadmap for political awareness, political development, IT ideology, implantation, educating the political class. I'm not even talking about the leaders now, I'm talking about the players, to know how to go through a process of identifying competence and party ideology and competent leadership in Nigeria. It's probably something we need to really think about and see if it is possible at all to go through that kind of program. Otherwise, we might be stuck in here for a long time, unless if by divine intervention, the right kind of leader just emerges without the present class being aware, and then they take over. Okay. My friend Stephen Enada is all the way in the US asking, how do we handle these matters? But I think Jumoke and Pastor Sonny will handle the question and answer system, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Bros, George Ashu, well done, sir.
How are you, sir?
I'm very fine. Okay, so we're going to have a bit of the question and answer, but let me just say, before I hand over to Jumoke, is how important is ideology in creating stability for our political parties? You mentioned that people vote more on emotions. And just taking a leaf from what happened in the United States, do you think that the votes were more swayed by emotions or by the stance of both parties? You know, did they have an ideology that you could rightly identify that people voted on? And so the first question was really, what is the importance of ideology to stability of a party?
Thank you very much. You know, American elections have been quite interesting. You know, these two main parties have existed for over 100 years. Everybody knows the ideology. Nobody's voting ideology anymore because they already grew up in the ideology. They are now voting individuals based on what they think that individual can implement that ideology. So they don't have a problem with ideology. They already know what the Democratic movement stands for. They know what the Republican movement stands for. They've known that because their forefathers have been in that system, the great fathers and great grandfathers were born into those methodologies. But the effectiveness of the leadership to be able to implement those policies and those ideologies in order to give them those benefits is what creates what we call primaries, and what we then have as this very difficult contest. And people keep going back and forth, hoping if this one doesn't work, let's try that one. If that one doesn't work, let's try this one. And we go back and forth. Then that's when emotionalism comes in. Because if you are not emotional, you will stick with the ideology you believe in, and you keep, you know, your patriotism in that ideology. I think that if you don't have an ideology, if you don't have an ideology for life, you are going to fail. If you don't have an ideology for parenting, if you don't have rules in your house as to what is right and what is wrong, the proper way in which you should raise your children, should you be buying them PS5, PS20, X this, X that, when they are like 8, 9, 10, and they get used to this affluent lifestyle. And then by the time they start any minimum wage, when they graduate, like me, 70,000, when my PS5 is now around 50,000, then you are going to develop, you have created an ideology already around that child. That ideology is the ideology of, I want the very best, so I'm not ready to wait, I'm not ready to grow, I'm not going to delay gratification. So that's very, very important that you have to create, even in your personal life, an ideology of living. You have to have a philosophy, because ideology really is your personal philosophy. So if you don't have philosophy, you are one of those that the breeze will blow this way, you go that way, the breeze will blow you that way, you go that way, because you are not rooted in anything. And instability means not rooted. And anything that has ideology, we call it dogma in the church. We call it dogma or doctrine. That means you are rooted in a dogma, you are rooted in a doctrine, you are rooted in a belief system. And that keeps you in one place. That makes you predictable and consistent. But if you do not have any strong doctrine, any particular dogma that, that defines your church movement, then you are going to have a bigger issue. The bigger issue you're going to have is that anybody's ideology is acceptable as long as there's a benefit to you. So I think without ideology, stability is definitely going to be the impact. There is a direct correlation between lack of ideology and instability. Because a person who is not rooted in anything, no value system, no moral values, there's one phrase I use for people like that. You cannot legislate a dead conscience. Somebody whose conscience is dead, you're not telling him the law. He has already decided to die. He has decided that impunity is his way of life. It's whenever you catch me, but until you catch me, I will keep breaking the law. What are you legislating for such a person? But the problem is that impunity was rooted in an ideology from when he was young. He got away with beating people. He got away with bullying. He got away with stealing. He got away with doing all these things. And as long as he keeps getting away with this thing, then he's going to grow up, and people like that are attracted to power. They're attracted to political power. They want to be able to take that impunity and establish it as an ideology. And then people will follow them. And then you have another generation of young people who think it's normal to break the law. So yes, without ideology, there can't be stability. Sir.
So that's why we don't have stability today in our political parties, you think?
Absolutely. If you have ideology, nobody decamps. How can you decamp from one party to an opposition party that your ideologies are completely different? If truly there was ideology, people will stay where they are, or they will become, in quotes, independent, which means I'm not standing with any of these parties because I don't believe in the ideology. Right now, it goes back to what I said in the beginning. Our political platforms right now are just platforms for people that have ambition. We are still waiting until we grow to the point where our political platforms becomes a platform for people that have vision and mission, and they have a plan, they are patriotic, and they want to deliver. And God will help us to get there.
So I bring you again to what Pastor Itwa asked. With the current trajectory that we are going on, how many years do you think it will take us to get there, if we will ever get there? What is it, like he said, that we need to begin to do now so that we can have this ideology and then stability?
Unfortunately, the parties that are currently in power, in particular in the past 25 years, they have taken us on a meandering journey into the wilderness of mediocrity and nothingness, which means essentially they don't know where they're going. And so we as a nation, we are just going like we're in the wilderness like the children of Israel in the days of Moses. Because if a leader really knows where he's going and defines where he's going, the people are ready to suffer if they know where he's going and they know what is going to happen at the end of the tunnel. So the fact that we have lost faith is because we had expectations. We didn't see any evidence of delivery of the dividends of democracy. And there's no promise. All we see is every time there is a new reform, the GDP per capita of the average Nigerian reduces. SAP, GDP per capita reduces. They come up with another one. GDP per capita reduces. Okay, now we're going to remove fuel subsidy. We're going to liberalize this. GDP per capita has gone down 3 times. Our national wealth has come down. We used to be #1 economy in the world, but now we're #4. So, and when you're #4, that affects the rating of your economy in Fitch ratings and, you know, and all the international exchanges. Okay, we are suffering for this. What is the end goal? Where's the government taking us? Is it so that we can improve the foreign reserves so that in the next 5 years, foreign reserves will be 80 billion, 100 billion, which will support currency? No problem, as long as we know. But you see, this round robin, trial and error governance, those things are instability. And that is because there is no specific ideology that that particular movement, that company, that organization has. So it says, let me try this, let me try that, let me try that. Then wait, let us see the result. And the results are not good. Okay, we'll go and tell them something else, and we whip up sentiment, whip up cultural sentiment, religious sentiment, whip up tribal sentiment, so that I get another 4 years, and then let me try again. Again, our people can't even tell the difference between a person who is leading this country based on ideology and who is just a representational figure, who's just representing their tribe, who's just representing their religion, who's just representing their culture. What we want in Nigeria is leadership and governance that is focused on solving the problems of Nigerians. Right now, our biggest problem is what? The biggest problem is inflation, lack of employment, and the multidimensional poverty in this country has skyrocketed. So if we had people who had ideology, this would not be so much of a problem. There will be a direction that people know that I will see this in the next 2-3 years. The evidence will come out in the next 2-3 years. But you know, our experience in Nigeria so far in 64 years is that we haven't had any government at any time that has.
So, Reverend George Ashu, what you are saying essentially is that this government is a government of trial and error, like
all the government.
Okay, let's narrow it down to the government that we are now. All the things they are telling us that he is working for our favor, we will see the light at the end of the tunnel. You are saying essentially that you don't believe them.
But you see, you know, empirical information is based on historical statistics. We've had the same expectation 12 years ago when a government came in, and we thought, okay, with this government, insecurity will reduce. Did we get the security situation improve? Right? Okay, we thought, okay, with a particular kind of government, corruption will reduce. So everybody rushed out a particular ideological party and brought in a new ideological party. Did corruption reduce? So the fact is that there's no emotion. I'm not being emotional about this. I'm basing my opinion on the facts. The fact is we haven't seen any. Don't forget, it's the same government in power. It's just a different leader. It's the same government. It's the government of the same party in power. We just have a different leader. So if we have not seen any difference in an ideological location of that party and a direction for its policies, it's difficult for us to believe that there's a light at the end of the tunnel for these sacrifices. Now, mind you, we're not talking about policies that enrich the rich. We're not talking about policies that make the rich richer. We're talking about policies that make the average Nigerian more comfortable, that builds a middle class, that removes poverty from the land, that allows more people to go to school and more people to be able to eat, that takes care of all our infrastructure, that reduces the need for people to keep going to other countries just so that their children have a greater opportunity. This fact remains that nobody has any hope. That's why they're leaving. If they had a sense that in another 3 years, another 5 years, another 10 years, some people will have the faith and invest in it. They will invest in it, just like people started investing in 1999, sorry. Oh, we have democracy now. People came from all over the country, all over the world. Some people came back to Nigeria from all over the world. It only took 8 years, and then their hopes were dashed.
Okay, thank you very much, Reverend Ashiru. Jumoke will take over now. I think we have a few hands, so that we'll finish by the bottom of the hour, and we can let everybody go. Jumoke, for the Q&A session, and if you have your own questions, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, sir, for this very thought-provoking and enlightening session, I'm sure. But I'll yield to the hands that are up. and then we'll follow up with you again on how we can engage you further at the Africa Leadership Group for some of the things that we're doing that you've already spoken about. Mr. Afolabi, please go ahead. Uncle Afolabi, go ahead with your question, please. So we have about 4 hands up. Okay. So the way we usually do this is we take 3 questions at a time, and then you address all 3 questions as a bunch, and then we take the next set of 3 questions. So because of time, we'll probably take 2 more hands. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and raise your hand. Right now we have 4. Go ahead, Uncle Afolabi, with your question.
Then there are some questions on the platform too.
Okay, please help me collate that, and then we'll include.
Okay.
Thank you. Uncle Afolabi, please go ahead with your question. Can you unmute or no? Let me see. Okay. Okay, we've asked you to unmute now. Go ahead. You can unmute now.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't unmute before.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. Couple of questions. First question is, you say you're a chairman of the party, but you didn't say the ideology of your own party. Could you please tell us the ideology of your own party? That's number 1. And number 2, my biggest issue is of these so-called our politicians and our leaders moving from one party to another party to another party. There have been very, very few politicians who have stuck since 1999 and stayed with one party. What can we do to... No, I don't think there's anything we can do, but your own thoughts on these so-called politicians just moving up and down. There's certain words I would like to use, but unfortunately, I'm in the public domain that I will not use, about them moving up and down. And then at the beginning of your intro, you were talking about ideology of countries. It's very difficult for Nigeria to have one particular ideology because ideology, also language is also an ideology. And in Nigeria, we have 3 main languages. So how would we be able to have a strong one whole Nigeria ideology? You said that to some countries, Nigerians are regarded as loud. To some countries, Nigerians are regarded as affluent. Yes, we are, but it's also very difficult when we have 3 different languages, many different ethnicities and everything to come out as one ideology. I don't know if you understand what I was trying to say there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Go ahead, Professor Grage. Good evening, ma. Please go ahead with your question.
Okay. Thank you very much, dear engineer and chairman.
Thank you.
It's great to hear from you. It's so nice that people like you are now getting into positions of leadership in politics. However, I still feel that you'll probably be overwhelmed by those around you who do not believe in your own ideology or what you want to do. But anyway, you can deal with that later. My first question is that it follows a comment that you were opining that the past method of governance before the white people came was okay and all that. Well, let me just tell you that as women, we don't think that is okay because there was no level playing field. There was no democracy in our system at that time. And if we went on with that patriarchal system, a lot of people will be marginalized, including women.
No.
Go ahead, Ma. Please unmute yourself. We had interference.
Right. It will also lead us to a situation where for people to participate, they will need to have inherited some wealth or, or get there some wealth by some means, which again is not really what we want if we want to develop our country in a patriotic way. So I would like your comment on that. And my second comment, which follows on that, is that it seems that our government today would like to include the Obas, the traditional rulers, in our system again, constitutionally. They have said so. And I have thought to myself, now, what does that mean? Does it mean that they are now going to start sharing the wealth of the nation, at that level, at the federal level, whereas they are supposed to be guiding people at the grassroots level in a way that they can produce their own resources and share their own resources at the grassroots level. But once you include them in the constitution, all they would do is to come and collect their own, money that is being shared at the federal level. So the next thing is that there's a problem with globalization. The globalization does not allow us to develop in our own way, the way we want to, without taking into consideration the effects of globalization on us. Effects in terms of trade, in terms of even the politics, and in terms of culture, the culture of technology has taken over, particularly our young ones, and all they are doing is being part of the world. They don't want to be part of their local communities anymore because they have access to the entire world. So, we would like you to talk about that, how that actually can be handled in forming new, informing parties, in getting parties to have their own ideologies.
Okay.
And again, that globalization has made us become more addicted to the Western values, Western luxury goods, etc. So that is the problem. I know you are going to stop me very soon. Okay.
Mommy, if
I can see your smile. Thank you.
You can see me
Finally,
smiling, and I unmuted
a very
myself.
specific thing. Finally. The ADC party, I got involved with ADC party when we tried to get Kingsley Moghalu to become the nominee of ADC party. But there was so much manipulation, so much, I want you to tell me what is now happening to the ADC party. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, because my mom's own was quite maybe 4 or 5 questions, so we'll take those first 2, and then we'll take the next 2. Thank you.
There's no problem.
Thanks
one of the things that I did when I won the Congress to become chairman of the party was to establish that in Lagos State, ADC was going to run with a nationalism, patriotism, and corporate management style methodology. And in order to be able to do that successfully, I actually ejected from the party a lot of the members of the old school who like to do politics the normal way, we expel them, you know. And the people that we work with now, a lot of them are dedicated professionals. We have Oxford graduates in my working committee. We have Cambridge graduates who are working in my cabinet. We have people that have done extremely well on their own, who are not joining the party system because they want funds or they want to have access to money. Because if you want to have access to money, don't join ADC, join APC or join any party that has a governor. ADC does not have. So why am I still here doing this? Is because we have been able to create a vision for African Democratic Congress in Lagos State. I have to be specific about the area where I have dominion. In Lagos ADC, we believe critically in competence. Competence. I'm very, very focused on the idea that we must do things well, we must do things right, we must do things in a way that gathers the right kind of impact on the people. Another important thing that we have pushed in our party in Lagos is that transparency. The method by which we come about our candidates, the method by which we arrange our activities, everybody must be carried along, and we must be transparent in all our activities. And we have been consistent with that. Another thing we do is that we have a very open relationship with all critical stakeholders. If you go to INEC in Lagos State and you say ADC, they say, ADC, they are doing well, they are stable, their chairman, you know, knows what he's doing and he's very professional, he does things the right way. If you go into IPAC or even to Lagos State government, even to the ruling party in Lagos, we have a very good reputation because we have been able to instill a fresh ideology, this ideology of professionalism, this ideology of putting the people first, you know, and that's what I've been selling. I've done at least 40 television interviews in the past 4 months, just reintroducing ADC to the public and letting them know, look, if you really do want Nigeria to succeed, then join us. If you really are patriotic, then join us. If you really want, you know, and it's easy for me to say this as a person who has been a representative of this country. You know, I have served Nigeria as an athlete. I was the first Mr. Nigeria, you know, going back to 1988. So I have carried this Nigerian flag and Nigerian banner on my head. Like I said, I was a federal scholar, state scholar. So I have seen, for me, and having met Mandela, the need to give back. I keep giving, even if the country doesn't give to you. And so that is the passion with which we try to do what we're doing in Lagos ADC. And we are now as a signpost to the ADC in other states. Even at the national level, they look to us. We have a leadership academy, which we have just started in ADC Lagos to mentor people that want to learn political participation and political leadership, just building them up. I've published a paper called Strategic Impact, Strategic Development in the Political Ecosystem. You know, and it's published, I think it's somewhere in one of these research institutions. You know, again, showing the kind of ideology we're trying to build. Everything which we have discussed tonight and everything which I have presented represents what we stand for. You know, eradicating poverty, improving education, giving women equal rights. Let me just say that, you know, and in particular to Professor Dick Egridge, this weekend, we have a team of women in professional women in politics visiting me on a courtesy call. Shows the work we have done in inculcating this relationship with women in politics, professional women in politics who belong to United Nations agency called Baobab. So these are all the evidences of the work we are doing in ensuring that the ideology party is about that transparency, about professionalism, about the people, about patriotism, about Nigeria first. You know, we're not America, but Nigeria first, not me first, then Nigeria. Because if Nigeria succeeds, all of us begin to get that opportunity. So then, Mr. Afolabi, I think that has also answered part of your question. The issue of decamping is personal. You know, people decamp all the time in banks. They decamp all the time in their professional, work. So I think human beings generally find it difficult to be content if they're in a place where they don't get the value for the time and energy they spend there. So we have nothing against them. Again, I said, when the party doesn't have a specific ideology, then the people are not loyal to anything. So they are free to go. But when the party has specific ideology and has built a culture, then that is when you now notice when somebody leaves that culture, in order to go somewhere else, that is when the campaign can be regarded as someone who is not sold out to serving that particular ideology. So the campaign is something we understand, but we haven't had the campaign experience apart from our governorship candidate, who graciously explained why he felt he had a better opportunity to win in one of the major parties, because that really is one of the driving forces of his decision to participate in politics. But vast majority of people in the party, apart from those who were expelled, are still doing the work that they are supposed to do. Professor Nike made a reference to Kingsley Moghalu. Unfortunately, once you lose the primaries, that's it, you lose your opportunities. One of the things we have to do as a political party system is make primaries a little less based and biased around finance and based on again, this ideology and corporate culture, about getting the right people. And I'm sure we're going to get there. And that's one of the reasons why, he couldn't get the ticket and he decided that he needed to become an independent person one more time. But I have a personal good relationship with him, and Lagos ADC also supported him to an extent. Again, I'm discussing what Mr. Fadabi said about national ideology and culture. You see, the purpose of NYSC is exactly that, to create a future leadership generation that have been built around serving their country. You'll be surprised how easy it is when you gather people from different cultures and form national football team. They go there as Nigeria. They have an idea of the way Nigeria plays football. They don't go there and say, I'm going to play Igbo football, Yoruba football. They go there and say, this is NFF. And they go in there and do their best and they get the results required. So the problem is that every time we are close to having a national philosophy, national ideology, our youth are close, we get divided again by politicians who are contesting. Every time we're close, because people are afraid of the loyalty of Nigerians to those that threaten their own individual political desires. How can you be loyal to them? And do you know it doesn't belong to your culture? Do you know it doesn't serve the same God as you? The moment you say that, then the emotional part of politics comes in. That person is now manipulated to shift their love and passion for who they want to the person who claims to be representing their interests. So unfortunately, that's where we are in our political development in Nigeria as a culture. And then responding again to Professor Grange, I really didn't say that life was better in pre-colonial era. What I said was that if we had a system of government pre-colonial, because we tend to forget that the colonial powers did not create us as a people. They only came and met what was on ground and then took it, which became what we call colonialism. So we had a system of government. Now, we can debate whether the system of government was ever useful. We can debate whether the systems of government was ever going to be sustainable, to be honest, in the light of modern development. But there were systems of government that existed in all the 300 tribes or so that are in this country. And that was the point we wanted to make. Then you also mentioned, Professor Grange, that how can people participate in politics when they need money to be able to get a ticket? What we've done, for example, in ADC, is women don't pay in order to encourage more women. And we try to see as much as possible if we can have up to 40% of the tickets allocated to women. And I do not believe in allocation, but for now, we have to create that opportunity for our women to be able to be involved in our party system. And same thing with youths. The youths also don't pay. Once you're under 30, you don't pay. So that's the least we can do for those who have not had any chance in their corporate history to develop finances and have enough to be able to participate. And by the way, almost everybody that contested in Lagos did not pay for their tickets. In Lagos ADC, we were able to convince the national ADC that those who have money, let them pay. Those who don't have money and they are passionate, let them take the ticket. So we had 40 candidates and maybe 5 paid. The remaining did not pay. And we did not see it as oh, we lost money. We saw it as, well, we have to give everybody a platform. So that's part of the ideology that I am talking about. Then traditional rulers in government, I support that. Of course, I'm biased towards it. My great-grandfather was Awujale of Ijebuland. And I think that one of the challenges we have as a nation is to suddenly cut out our history and our culture, and then want to imbibe another culture that we were never historically part of, the American culture, the British culture. So there must be a role for the traditional institution to play at the local government level, because they are in the local government. So it's either they have a cabinet and the local government has, the rulers are able to be part of that local government cabinet, not to share money, but to make sure resources are brought to their people. Because if you don't fight for your people will not get developed. And if your people don't get developed, there's poverty in your land. What kind of king is it that wants to be a king and there's poverty all around him? So I would think that if they do it properly and they do it effectively and efficiently, there can be a place for traditional rulers to play a constitutional role at the local government level, because that's where they are operating. So then the last question you asked is on the effect of globalization. Yes, the globalization is, I support globalization, but unfortunately, our industrial base is too weak to compete internationally. Sometime in 1998, I partnered with Nigeria American Chamber of Commerce to organize a conference in Abuja called Nigeria Can Compete. So you can see as far back as 1998, which is about 26 years ago, I was already working with NEBSA, NEPC, and whatever their various titles at that time, to make Nigeria an investment destination. And even right now, I'm still pushing to get out there some technology that would allow the aggregation of all investors who want to invest in this country on one platform. So basically, globalization requires competence and efficiency, which we don't have. But if we start to drive it, we'll get there. But we cannot be insular. It's impossible. We import too much to be insular. We need to have balance of trade. And our young people have to learn international skills and they have to push out their products. So I would say that ideologically, that I believe in the economics of globalization, but I also believe you must protect certain industries. The most important thing we need in this country is that food inflation should go down. People should be able to eat. Transportation should be available for everybody. Basic infrastructure should be available for everybody. And then let everything else be, competitive. And that's the way we can grow our economy and become a great nation. Thank you very much. I think I've attempted to answer the questions.
Yes, you have. Thank you so much. So we're going to take the last two hands that are up and then see the questions that we have in the chat. So go ahead, Pastor Funke, with your question. We've asked you to unmute. Please go ahead and unmute.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you very much, my dear sister Jumoke. Thank you, sir. This has been really, really enlightening, and thank you for touching on UPN. I'm from that branch, and every day Papa is being appreciated, and I love that. I'm just going to talk about the effect of party adherence and commitment. I was watching a film the other day on Hitler's Germany, and I saw that at the very end of Hitler's life, first of all, the woman in his life, they died together, but Gorbachev, Herring, and all of that, there was actually a man, after the dream failed, what they believed, the propaganda, who actually died with all his family. What am I trying to get out? When people are committed to a cause, even when it appears that it has failed, they don't just cross carpet and everything. They are really, and from that disastrous example, I took something out, that this man must really have really inculcated those ideology, which was based on propaganda at that time, which the present government tried to do. Change begins with you and all that. But, obviously the commitment was not there. So we can borrow a leaf from that in studying what happened to Britain. Today, we still have the Labour Party, we still have the Conservative Party, and we all know what Labour Party stands for, the welfare state from the cradle to the grave. And we need to, people like you, to drive in ideologies, belief systems that will sustain Nigeria. That's number one. Number two, you said something about emotional voting, and I think that's quite debatable. Even watching the American politics, I saw that the facts played a huge role, in terms of religion, in terms of gender, LGBT and all that. The facts played a huge role. Yes, some people, because we studied voting behavior in politics, some people, they will say, because my granddad was this party, then I will continue to vote. But really, at the end of the day, I want to say that the facts have, they play a huge role. And I just want to ask, why are you pinning it on the emotional aspect? That's number two. That last question is to do with the national conference that we did. It involved tribes, it involved belief system, and a lot of people came together. And I want to give it to the PDP government, because over time, even after them, this has not been done. A lot, we sat together to consider the way forward, how to bring structure, how to bring the regions together and all that. I don't know, is this, because the paper is still there, how can we stir it up? You and I, because we are politicians, and bring it back and ensure, because money, these people were paid, and they spent, I think, months considering that, and every time we want to phase out that Nigerians are not doing this, but that was done. How can we revive it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, Architect Etok's hand is the last one we'll take for questions, because we have some comments. We are really up on the hour. Please go ahead, Sir Charles, with your question.
Thank you very much. Thank you for, Comrade George, Engineer George, Architect George. Thank you for your conversation today, very rich, and you opened up a lot of interesting aspects of our very young democracy. And I think that some of the things you discussed cannot be covered in 90 minutes or even 2 hours. Maybe we have multiple town halls to start exchanging ideas on how to build our country, position it for progress, if you will. Yeah, I like Professor Grange, we were very involved in the ADC of 2022, 2023, because we believed in that mantra of say, join us if you want something different from Nigeria. So we were supporters of Kingsley Moghalu. And so we were very hopeful that he would come out of the primary, and I think Nigeria would have been better for it. Unfortunately, the same thing that happens to a lot of candidates who have good intentions and want to do the right thing for Nigeria, but they get ambushed by the corruption in the system. And so I applaud you for what you are doing in Lagos. I think even many of us, we saw Doherty as the best positioned candidate to confront the likes of the Jagabans and the rest of them. But unfortunately, it's all history now. Question is, a lot of our young people are not ready for mentoring because they want to start from the top. And so even though we all know that leadership does not start from the top, because you have to mentor the grassroots so that they can become functional and effective leaders, what is ADC doing to make sure that that is the case? And then I would credit ADC for recognizing that the diaspora to be an integral part of Nigerian politics, and therefore you made diaspora zone 7. We would like to see that, even though many of us have left the ADC because of that experience we had in 2022, 2023. Why? Because we saw ADC just like any other Nigerian party. And that was not very encouraging. Because even though we saw it as a change agent for Nigeria, our experience says otherwise. But I applaud what you are doing in Lagos. But you're also aware that a successful ADC in Lagos doesn't necessarily mean that ADC will be recognized as a national party. You can become successful in Lagos, but you're just like NNPP being successful in Kano, or ABGA being successful in Anambra State. But ideally, to be it will be very helpful to the country if ADC, as the name implies, can become, if you will, a national party. A party that people can see as the potential to take on the bigger ones of PDP and APC. Again, I applaud what you're doing, but let's see if we can do things a little bit more differently to move the country forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Architect Etok, please.
Okay, I want to thank you for this Thursday tonic, which enlightens all of us. Basically, I'm an appointee of Mr. President, but I've come here to confirm what our speaker said, that in the last election, ADC gave a lot of platforms to people. I contested for the governorship of Akwa Ibom State under ADC, and I want to confirm that virtually everybody in Akwa Ibom State got the form free. So ADC actually did open that space for so many people to participate. Incidentally, last night I was on TVC, and one of the questions they asked me was, have you decamped to APC? I told them I am a member of Mr. President's team, and I have become relatively neutral, understandably. And but that does not stop me from identifying a lot of the good things that ADC had, the ADC DNA. And I want to pray that people that mean well will get into political parties based on ideologies. There are too many of people who mean well, who are standing aloof because they are afraid. There's nothing wrong. I contested against Mr. President. When God wants to do something for you, he does it. And here I am, occupying an extremely sensitive position in the government. And nobody talks to me about party because they believe you're a professional, come to do a professional work. So I don't talk politics. I just face my work in housing. Thank you so much for what you're doing in ADC, and God bless you, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful.
Thank you very much. I would like to add my own question to this set of three, and this is a pain point for me. The fact that politicians, every circle or every political circle, weaponize our differences, which is really our strength, right? And as you talked about the fact that we have commonalities, whether it's in sports or whether we are outside of the country, but we fall victim every political cycle. How do we address that? Because that is a major issue. And I think the one key takeaway you said, when we're getting to that point of wholeness as a nation, then this happens. So they have mastered that strategy, but we haven't. So please just add that to the other questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in fact, I will answer that question first, because it then helps me to answer the previous question about facts-based voting. You know, the United States democracy has had 200 years of practice plus, and they have been able to understand the ideologies of the parties, and they know what those parties stand for. So really, a lot of people who are voting in America are just voting. They already know. They're not waiting for new facts as much as they've made up their minds, the platforms that best supports what their family's individual culture is. But we are not yet there as a nation, Nigeria. Our people are still practicing the concept of understanding politics. That's why manipulation is easy for those who want to manipulate others. So weaponizing is about the only way you can get people's emotions riled up, so that people feel like, I can't vote for this person because of this, I can't vote. None of it is facts-based. Sit people down and say, why did you vote for this governor? They say, he's my man now, it's from my place. Why did you vote for that person? They told us to vote for him. That's what you're going to hear. And these are the things that need credence to the fact that in Nigeria, politics is emotional, and politics is emotional in other parts of the world. And you will find a small percentage of people that are purely based on facts. The vast majority are waiting to be moved, to make a decision rather than sit at home, especially when they know you they know you already. You know, they know you already. You have to understand. You have to understand that if we're watching the media, we will make the mistake of thinking what people are saying in the media is what other people are using to make their decisions. If you live within the people, there are some belts in America where those people make their decision based on what is going on around them. And they said, okay, what fact is there when somebody is asking John McCain? But they said Obama is a Muslim. They said. That's not fact-based. That was somebody saying this and they were afraid that they're not going to point. That's majority of people the majority of people who are voting in a part of America are voting based on fears, based on how somebody's riled up their emotions about, oh, some people are going to take away their power, they're going to take away their rights, they're going to take. So that's fear. That's not based on facts. If people who want facts go to the website of the candidate and check the policies. If you go to the website and you check the reader count, you will find maybe hundreds of thousands. And yet there are 76 million voters. How many of them read the policies? It is actually just emotional intelligence. Human beings are like that. But the reason they are more biased to facts than us is they've got centuries to know the facts. They are not new facts. They're just new people pushing those facts. So let me leave that. Thank you, Architect Eto, you know. And in fact, the two architects, you have tested the ADC ideology, you have seen what is possible, and you have also seen the weakness when a system doesn't have a strong process and ideology to back it up. And that's one of the reasons why in Lagos, we, knowing what that weakness is, I hosted Kingsley Moghalu in Lagos during our Congress. He sat right next to me and I gave him a platform to speak to the people. But I don't control what happens at the national, primaries. But in Lagos, we said we let everybody come and sell to everybody. Speak, let everybody hear you. And when they asked me individually, who are we supporting as a party? I said, let everybody vote their conscience according to what they've heard. So go there. Lagos is not standing with this candidate or against that candidate. Go there and and our votes were split in Lagos because of that ideology, which is different from the past when one candidate will say, this state, collect, block voting. We didn't do that in Lagos. We didn't accept it. Thank you very, very much. So, national conference. It depends on the reason national conference was organized. If the intention of the national conference was really to bring forth a change in the country, the reports of the conference should have been turned into bills, and those bills should have been presented at the National Assembly, and if passed by the National Assembly, those same bills will now be sent to the states so that the states can adopt them again at the state assemblies. But not a single bill was presented by the presidency to the National Assembly as a follow-up to the national conference. And that's what gives the people the impression it was a talk show. You know, and it was a talk show. Because usually what happens is when you gather people together to discuss an issue, you then turn the outcome of that issue into a bill which you send to the National Assembly. I'm not aware that specific bills were sent to the National Assembly. There were recommendations. Even what we're discussing about regionalism now that the president wants to bring up, it was an outcome of the national conference, but it wasn't presented as a bill then. Now, people are not trying to present it as a bill now. So that should have happened at that time. Maybe if it had happened, a lot of those suggestions that your team worked on, we would have been able to get it. And then you mentioned something about Hitler being able to get people together. You see, this is another classic example why I say that it may be difficult for us to accept, but the fact of the matter is that a lot of people's voting, they vote based on how the leader they are following rise up their emotion to believe in a cause. I mean, we have to be able to look at empirical facts based on what goes on around the world. Okay, look at Brexit. Oh, there was a lot of information, illegal, this is illegal, but now on reflection, people are saying, oh, it was Nigel Farage that was pushing us, that there are going to be Muslims coming from here, Arabs coming from here, that was coming from there. Was it based on any form of facts that they sat there and enumerated? A lot of the voters, the leaders may know the facts. The people who are pushing the agenda may know the facts, but the people who voted simply were riled up to believe that there's a problem. When Sunak was made prime minister in the UK, we know a lot of people said, immigrants have taken over. That is not based on facts. He's a British citizen, period. It was based on the fact that some people said, oh, these foreigners are going to take over our country. Now we have a Nigerian who is there. There's another group of people that are saying, in fact, it's even worse. We're not even going to vote at all for conservatives because they brought another immigrant. These are emotional reactions. They're not set to listen to Kemi and hear what Kemi has to say. They've not waited to see Kemi deliver on whether or not she can be a good leader. They've made their minds up because they've concluded on the color of her skin, on the fact that she has come from a particular place or she belongs to a particular party system. We are not going to vote for her without waiting to hear what she has to deliver. So this is human nature. All forms of leadership, they are also based on emotional intelligence. All forms of leadership. And the failure of leadership, according to research, is usually associated not with IQ, but with EQ. Most people that have high IQ have low EQ. They have low EQ. They don't like to use their emotions, so their leadership talents and skills are stunted because they don't know how to be empathetic. They have problems with relationship management, and people who manipulate also are people that have low emotional intelligence. And unfortunately, that is one of the tools that politics and politicians use. And depending on which side we belong to, we are going to agree or disagree. But that's my opinion and thoughts. I think I have been able to touch a lot of the issues that have been raised there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are going to ask for your closing remark. And as part of your closing remark, I would like you to please address this issue of consolidation of power. You talked about political, so many political parties in the country. And I remember, I think, 2023, there was an attempt to consolidate some of this political power just so that they could go against the big two. What is ADC, or you, because you're very eloquent and you're very patriotic, your heart and soul is in the good of Nigeria. How do you, what are some of the strategies that people like yourself or others that think like you have for really trying to consolidate this power and bring everyone together? And how is that working, building that coalition? So that if you can add that to your closing remark, and then I'll bring up Mr. President for closing once I make the announcements. Thank you.
Sorry, before he gives us his closing remarks, some questions and comments on the platform. Let me quickly read them.
Please.
Some of them are just statements. Pastor Stephen.
Uncle Olu, we lost your audio.
Converge and create these lofty ideologies and policies. Then, Mr. Yinka Olayinka Afolabi, how do we sensitize the populace to getting it right about ideology instead of being emotional? Then, Shatu Alpha, so why is it that same people are recycling themselves along all political parties in these countries? So those are the main questions along on the platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please go ahead and address those with your closing remarks, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me again start with the issue of collaboration. Every time I'm asked about we're merging, we're collaborating, I always say one thing. What is the vision? Is it just to get power, or is it to serve the people? Because one thing we have to be careful about is this idea of ganging up to win. And then after you win, you don't have an ideology of how to rule. You don't have the competency to rule. You don't have the people that you can rule efficiently with. So every time that happens, I always tell them at the national level, they are discussing collaboration. At the state level, I'm interested in governance. At my state, I'm only interested in going out there to deliver what the people ask me to do. I'm interested in ensuring that they get answers to their questions. I'm interested in ensuring that anything that they require to be able to function as citizens, I give them answers. When the women come to me, I look for how to empower them. When the men come to me, I look for how to engage them in skill acquisition. And then I mentor them, and all of our cabinet, the estate ESCO, do the same in all the various local governments and all the various wards. and we leave the people at the top to do all that. But every time an input is coming, I always say, if you cannot first work on the vision, work on the ideology, it will not succeed. You know, history is always a great teacher. We always want to do things. But like one Korean man said, he said, Nigerians always have this idea of wanting to do things, but they never see it through. We get bored halfway. We get tired halfway. We get distracted halfway. I, as a former athlete, know the danger of trying to become a champion, and then halfway you lose focus. You are going to lose your gold medal. So I cannot afford for any distraction at this moment, but I think it's a good idea to ensure that at least the ruling party has an effective opposition. If it requires a merger, then so be it. If it requires collaboration of parties that have the same mind, so be it. But the critical thing is we should make sure we are providing the people a credible alternative. They must be able to weigh and see and say, oh, this is the ruling party. So what makes you different? And they say, okay, now. Otherwise, you will just go and you will lose all credibility, lose the election, and every constituent part of that collaboration becomes people that everybody will play say they're not even serious. They couldn't even gather together to win. So that is very important. And again, speaking to all of the other questions that people have asked, I would like to say that vision, mission, ideology, strategy, these are all the things that we need to deliver the next generation. I've already stopped thinking of the next 2 years, 2027. You know, I'm more focused on the next 6 years, 8 years, and so on and so forth. So what we should be doing is building, you know, African Leadership Group and the supporters of the African Leadership Group to build a system, build structures that people can come and tap into, get inspired, go out there, and wherever they are operating, even in the corporate world, they can go there and deliver. Look at one of the key people that delivered Donald Trump the presidency, Elon Musk. It's a corporate giant. He came into the political space and used his corporate experience to deliver great results. So who says you cannot be involved without necessarily being in the party system? So, but you need to excel in something and bring that excellence into play in governance. And I think that's what I'm going to leave with everybody today. That your brick is where you are influential. Make use of that brick and you will make a great nation called Nigeria. God bless you. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Thank you very much. That's a tagline, brick by brick. Take your brick and lay it. And then the next one comes and lays their brick. Really appreciate this very thought-provoking and enlightening conversation. And I'll probably play it over and over again and share it with as many people as we can, because Nigerians need to hear this. This was very enlightening. Thank you. So I'm going to take some announcements, and particularly about this leadership school and the training that you have. We have a School of Leadership and Governance. And we also have a mentorship program. It's the Itwa Olajide Ighodalo Responsible, Ethical, Accountable Leadership Program. And we use that to mentor the youths. We started with a group of youth corpers last year, with people like Professor Gage. Thank you, Mom, for being a mentor. Those tried and true that have proven themselves in service to imbibe some of this culture and ethics in our youth. And we graduated our first cohort a few months ago in September, and then we're on our second cohort right now. And just encouraging, training, and pouring into these youths to become these leaders that have a code of conduct. And then also, maybe we would also talk to you about having them come to participate in your political training, those that are interested in running for elections, or even just for them to start getting that education or information about the political space. So thank you so much for your time here. It has been very informative, and this is a session that I think we would definitely share. More people need to hear what you have to say, and hopefully we would have opportunities to collaborate with you in future. Thank you for your time. God bless you. Appreciate you. And then I would bring Pastor Sonny up to give the vote of thanks, but want to just let everyone know we meet here same time, same Zoom link, a different conversation. And next weekend, our youth arm, we have a youth arm that does this discourse on national issues. And I posted the flyer in the chat room. So please come out and support our youth. They meet once a month and they are engaged on leadership conversations similar to this, but this is the youth arm of ALG. So thank you everyone for joining us again this evening. It was good to have you here. See you again next week. God bless you. God bless Nigeria. Thank you, Honorable Ashiru, Pastor, Reverend. It was very, very enlightening. Over to you, Pastor Sonny.
Okay, thank you very much, Jumoke, and thank you, Reverend Ashiru. And we want to say a very, very big thank you. Keep doing what you are doing. Don't be deterred. Like you say, brick by brick, we'll get there one day. And we're also doing our part here. We want to thank all the guests as usual. Thank you for being part of this very, very enlightening and rich show. Next week again, same time, same link. We're here to have another conversation on a very interesting national or topical issue, as the case may be. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of the week. God bless you. Au revoir. Thank you.
Au revoir. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Nigeria ideology.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night,
Pastor.
Pastor.
Good night.
Hey, Lara. Good night, Lara. Good to see you.
Which of the Laras? Good